All right, hello everybody and welcome back to the Photography Daily Challenge. My name is Terry White. It's my pleasure to be here today and for the next 8 or 9 days until we're done with this particular challenge. Each day we're going to be taking a look at different steps in the post-processing workflow using Photoshop. Now yesterday I kind of gave an introduction. You guys can go back and look at that if you missed it. But I kind of outlined what the difference was between Lightroom and Photoshop, and that this challenge is all about Photoshop for photography. Now, we've had great challenges for Photoshop in general, for compositing, for doing creative work, and all of that's fantastic. But we're going to take a step back for our beginners, and we're going to start off with some really simple, basic tips for making your photos look better in general. And then as we go through the different challenges each day, we'll take it up a notch and we'll just get a little bit better, a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more, until you feel comfortable, hopefully, editing your photos like a pro. So with that said, thanks everyone for joining me. I'm going to give a couple of quick shout outs here. I see Pam, I see Anna, Dill, Deanna, welcome everyone. This is going to be a great day. Victoria, great to have you here. Voodoo Val in the house, what's up? Camilo, welcome. Johanna, and if I pronounced your name incorrectly, it wasn't personal. I'm just bad at pronouncing names. So Samuel, everyone's here. Great, 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 great. All right, so once again, this is the Photography Daily Challenge. Now, the challenge today is all about lighting. And I always say with the best subject, if the lighting's off, you're not going to have a great photo. And controversially, the same thing. You can have amazing lighting, but if it's just a bad subject, it's not going to be a great photo either. You really need the combination of both. And a lot of times you'll go out and you'll shoot a fantastic scene or landscape, and you'll come back and you look at it on your computer and you're kind of like, that wasn't what I saw. Like my eyes saw these bright, vivid, brilliant colors and this fantastic sunset, sunrise, this blue hour, this amazing photo. But then when you get back, especially if you shot in RAW, it looks kind of dull. Maybe the shadows are a little too dark. Maybe it just doesn't have the vibrancy and colors that you would expect from what you saw. So we're going to tackle that today, and we're going to get into how you can make your photos look closer to what you saw, if not dead on. Now, with that said, I'm going to take, especially starting today, I'm going to take two approaches to the challenge. I'm going to show you some traditional Photoshop techniques that have been around for decades. So when people call these features out, you'll know what they are. But then at the end, I'm going to show you the way to really do it using the more modern techniques in Photoshop. So that way you get your feet wet in both ways, and therefore you won't be intimidated when you see those options in the menu. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the community. So let's go ahead and switch over to my system here. And again, if you're new to this, you're going to head over to behance.net. Normally you would go to Daily Creative Challenge, but you're going to go to Daily Creative Challenge/photo. That's the one that we're working on today. And if you haven't already registered, go ahead and click that blue button to register. Of course, once you sign in with your Adobe ID, it will outline all the steps. We're going to wrap this up on May 26th, and you'll have your ability to submit each day, or you can wait till the end and submit them all, and we'll be looking at your entries in Discord as we go forward. So today's challenge, once again, is lighting. You can get to a sample image that I'm going to be working with today. You can actually download that image. And of course, if you don't have Photoshop, you can get it and you can join us on Discord, which I'm going to pop over to real quick. And I can see people have already started submitting entries for this image or for this challenge using the sample that I provided. And some of their own. So I can just see where you're enhancing the lighting. And of course, some are taking creative liberty and adding color, and that's great too. So looks like a little bit of HDR processing there, and this is all great. So this is what I love to see, is that people are actually taking a challenge and they're taking it upon themselves to make these photos better. All right, so let's jump to it. I'm going to switch over to Photoshop. Now that we're in Photoshop, and I explained this yesterday, I'm in the essentials, kind of the day one. You open up Photoshop, this is the workspace that I'm in. There is one for photography. There is my own custom ones that I've made, but I'm going to go ahead and jump over to the photography one for now. Now the image, and I know this is, for some of you, this is going to sound really basic, but a lot of people are like, well, how do I even open an image off my camera? How do I get the image from my phone to Photoshop? So I can't answer every situation, but I can say that if you double click the image you downloaded and it doesn't open in Photoshop, because maybe your default is to open it up and maybe on the Mac in Preview or on Windows in the Windows photo editor. If that's not your default, you can always usually drag the image on top of the Photoshop icon or into the Photoshop window to open it. I know it sounds like a simple thing. We've been doing this for years, but you got to remember there are people out there that just got a camera yesterday, just started working with Photoshop yesterday or today, and it's something that we take for granted. They may not know. So going forward, you might want to reassociate .jpg, .dng to Photoshop so that when you double click that photo, it does open up in Photoshop. All right, now I've got the photos loaded in my CC library just so they're handy. But if they were on my desktop or in a folder, I would just double click on it, it would open in Photoshop. So I'm gonna do the opposite. I'm gonna double click from the library and have it open in Photoshop. And this was a scene from my 2016 trip to Iceland. And this was sunset in the ice lagoon. And I was standing right there on the beach. And by the way, I noticed that either another tourist or another person is standing over there to the right. I didn't notice this when I gave you guys this photo. But that's going to be another challenge, removing distracting elements. But anyway, I took this scene at sunset and I got back to my computer and I was like, it's okay. It's just not as beautiful as I remember. Like I remember these dramatic clouds. I remember being able to see the black sand or the black rocks on the beach. And it's kind of missing some things to make this better. So like I said, I'm going to walk you through several methods because I look at Photoshop as like a buffet of features. You can pick whichever ones taste best to you, and you can use any combination. There is no right or wrong way, so don't ever let someone say you're doing it the wrong way. You might not be doing it the most efficient way. You might not be doing it the way that they would do it. But just remember that no matter which approach you take, it's whatever feels best for you and gets you the result you want. All right, so with that said, and thanks for the compliment that this is beautiful. Hopefully by the end of this section, we will make it more beautiful. All right, so let's start with the again, basics, some of the old school ways of using Photoshop before we jump into the way I would really do this. All right, so under the image menu, under adjustments, you've got several adjustments, with the very first one going all the way back to pretty much day one Photoshop. Like Photoshop 1.0, I believe, had brightness and contrast. And brightness and contrast is one of those things that most of us never touch anymore because it just doesn't do enough. And there are more professional ways to do it. But let's go back and look at it. So brightness and contrast. Now, one of the reasons that we really didn't use this as professional photographers very much is because it used to not do a really good job. And that's what this use legacy is for. The legacy is the old bad way. That's why it's unchecked. So you never want to use legacy unless you just want to amuse yourself of how bad brightness and contrast used to be back in the 90s. But anyway, we're not going to do that. We're just going to go ahead and adjust, and we make sure that we're in preview. And I love it when it's just simple sliders, because you can't go wrong. If you're sliding in one way and it's not making it better, go back the other way or set it back to 0 or just cancel. Now, I will point out that in most of the things I'm going to show you today, that there is an auto button. And auto simply means I'm going to let the computer, I'm going to let Photoshop guess as to what this should look like. And with guesses, sometimes the guess is good, sometimes the guess is not good. So if I hit auto and I don't like it, I can cancel or undo it. And I haven't lost anything other than a couple seconds of trying. But if auto really worked, hey, I gained a few seconds of me not trying to figure out the slider. So let's click auto. And it made an improvement. I don't know that it's one that I would make, but it made an improvement. All right, so here's a quick shortcut. If you hold down your Option key on the Mac or your Alt key on Windows, you can click Reset and put it back to the way it was. So that way you don't have to cancel and go back to brightness and contrast. All right, so now let's take the manual approach. Let's just say I want to see what brightness and contrast will do. Well, you don't have a lot of choices. You can either make the photo darker, which I don't think that's what it needs, or you can make the photo brighter. And as I make it brighter, that's really helping me in the foreground of the photo, but it's destroying the background. It's destroying my sky. So I could say, oh, well, maybe if I bump up the contrast, that will help, and that really doesn't help. So this is one of those things where brightness and contrast is not a bad thing. It's just not good for this photo. Simple as that. So you're gonna just go through, you're gonna put that back on the buffet and say, nope, don't want any more brightness and contrast. That's not what I need. So let's try it again. Image, adjustments, let's go to levels. Now levels and curves have been around for years, and those were the methods, and some, to this day, some pros still prefer levels and curves over anything else. So I'm not gonna take away from levels and curves. I still use levels every now and then. I still use curves a little bit every now and then, but they're more or newer, enhanced ways of doing things. So let's go to levels. And in levels, this can be confusing because you have all these different, now you have a bunch of different sliders, and it's not really self-explanatory as to what they do. Brightness and contrast, that was easy. Brighter, darker, more contrast, less contrast. But what do these do? Well, you have to understand when you start looking at anything that brings up a histogram, what the histogram is for. So it's showing me currently where all the data in this photo is. And the way you read a histogram from left to right is shadows, midtones, highlights. So I can just look at the histogram without being an expert and say, oh, there's a big spike in the shadows, which means they're really dark. Oh yeah, okay, you're right. I can see the shadows are really dark. The midtones are kind of in the middle, and the highlights are really low because there's not a lot of light in this photo. So if I wanted to brighten up the shadows, I can try this. But wait, Terry, it's doing the opposite because I'm increasing it. I'm actually telling it to do more. So do I go this way? Yeah, I go that way because now I'm actually increasing the brightness because I said that's where the data is, but the sliders kind of work the opposite. Now, if you really want to work the way that's kind of intuitive, I want to make the darker areas lighter. That's what these are on the output levels. So if I say, oh, make darker stuff lighter, that's what this does. But see how it's getting kind of gray too? So that's where the contrast would come in to where I'm making this brighter, but I also need to increase the contrast as well. Now midtones, that's a good thing too, that you can just adjust the midtones. And therefore you can go in and say, well, the midtones kind of brought everything a little brighter. That's getting better. My highlights still aren't where I need them to be. So maybe I just make the highlights a little darker in the photo, and I'm kind of getting there. So levels can kind of get me there if I just keep messing with this on this photo. And there's even some presets at the top. But I'm not going to use levels because it's just too much work in this case for too little reward. So let's cancel. And aren't you glad I'm walking you through all the things not to do? Let's go to curves. All right, curves. This is even more confusing. There's just a line. Why is there a line if it's called curves? It doesn't make any sense. Where's the curve? Same thing. I'm seeing the histogram, so I know that spike on the left side is where my shadows are. That low bar on the right-hand side are where my highlights are, and everything in the middle. Why is this called curves? Because this gives you a little bit more flexibility on how you adjust the specific areas. So for example, I can do the same thing. I can say, oh, let's bring the shadows up a little bit. And that will make everything brighter because I move the whole line. But if I bring that back down and I click on the line, now I can make a curve. I can say, oh, make the midtones brighter. Oh, but let's take these highlights and bring those down a bit. Oh, well, I don't want to bring all of the blacks up, but let's bring maybe that particular area up. Ooh, now I'm kind of getting where I want to be. And so in this case, I actually prefer curves over levels for what I'm going to get. That's why you have a choice. It's not one way is always the better way. It's whatever's better for what you're working on. So for those of you who have always been afraid of curves, be afraid of curves no more because I've explained to you now how they work. And you can click along that bar and make your path as curvy as you need to by moving the points up and down to adjust the specific shadows all the way up to the highlights any way you want. Now there's more to these dialog boxes. I can get into every single option, but then we'd run out of time. So let's cancel out of that. Let's go up to image and let's do a couple more before we get to the one I really want to do. So exposure, oh, that sounds easy. And it is. It's just not what we need for this photo because this is, again, an overall thing. Do I need the overall photo to be brighter? No, because now I'm killing the sky. The sky isn't where I want it to be. So I don't want the overall photo to be brighter or darker, but if I ever needed that, like I just want to bring the overall photo up a bit, that's where exposure really rocks. All right, well, Terry, if none of those things except for maybe curves is going to do it, then what else is there? Well, if we go to adjustments, and I'm going to skip over some of these adjustments, and I'm going to go down to shadows and highlights. And then we're going to jump to HDR toning. And then we're going to do the real thing. So 2 more things to bear with the old way of doing it. Shadows and highlights. Well, that made an improvement just by bringing it up. That's almost where I want to be. My shadows get better. I can see the rocks better. My sky didn't get destroyed. So shadows and highlights in this case, in this photo, actually does a really good job. So maybe I want to bring the shadows down a bit more. Maybe I want to bring the shadows up a little bit more. Maybe I want to adjust the highlights, kind of keep them intact. Cool, cool, cool. That's kind of getting me where I want to be. So again, right tool for the right situation. All right, so let's go in. I seem to screw up curves more than I do levels. Yeah, because curves, again, because you're in free form control over the curves, so you really have to do, you really have to get where you want to be. All right, so cancel that. One more, and this is more of a creative one. So image adjustments. When I say creative, meaning that I normally wouldn't use this to fix a photo. I wouldn't fix lighting with this. I would use this for more of a creative look. And this is one of those features that will either make your photo look kind of cool or really, really, really awful. So it just depends on the photo and depends on the settings. So HDR stands for high dynamic range. And when I first bring it up, I'm not thrilled with it. It's okay. But I haven't done anything. I just brought it up and that's what it defaulted to. Now, I'm going to tell you, don't even bother with any of these until you really learn what they all do and you can experiment on your own time. Really where you want to go with this is right to the presets. Because the presets are kind of spelled out and they kind of show you, or they kind of tell you what they're going to do. So there's a preset for surrealistic, high contrast, low contrast, monochromatic, so forth and so on. I'm going to skip all of those. I'm going to go to one of my friend's presets. Scott Kelby, a friend of mine, actually has a preset built into Photoshop. It's called Scott 5. RC Concepcion has one called RC 5. They're both a little different, but it's their 5 sliders that they move or their 5 steps. And if I were looking for a creative look to this photo, that's killing it. I love that. I would tweak it a little bit, but I like the way where that's headed. And if I were to choose one of the built-in ones, like surrealistic, depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for that aftermath of a nuclear attack, there you go, you're done. All right, so it really depends on the creative look you're looking for. All right, so with all of that said, let's jump to where we really want to be. Where do we really want to go to make this photo look the way it's supposed to, the way it's intended? You're going to skip all of that image adjustment stuff. They're all great. They're all legacy. They're all good things. You should know them, and I'm glad I was able to expose them to you. But for our last couple of minutes, we're going to do it the easy way. We're going to do it the way I would do it. And that is under the filter menu, you've got a great filter called Camera Raw Filter. Now you can either use the Camera Raw plugin when you open up a RAW file. You can use Camera Raw built into Lightroom, or you can use it as a filter on any photo or any layer. So when I go to Camera Raw Filter, and it's letting me know there's a new version of Camera Raw as of today. Great, thanks for letting me know. One of the first things I want to tell you to do is let it do its thing. Hit auto. So if I hit auto, which is right here, I'm saying, I don't want to spend time working with each one of these sliders individually. You just get me started and then I'll tweak it if I want to change it. So I hit auto, and auto got me most of the way there, not completely. So what would I do next? I would increase the shadows because I still don't like them where they are. I might adjust the temperature to make this a little cooler or a little warmer. You adjust to your heart's content. I would definitely bring up the vibrance and the saturation to kind of bring those colors out, because it's not just about lighting, it's also about color. And I can increase the contrast a bit more. And we have a brand new texture slider as of today. I can bring that texture slider up, and I can get from that to this. So from that, kind of flat, kind of dull, kind of gray, to that. And that was just a couple tweaks with a couple sliders. Done. So much easier when you're doing it that way. All right, so let's talk about export. Once you tweak either this photo that I gave you or your own photo and you want to upload it for the challenge. Now, yesterday I kind of showed not the great way to do it. You can go up to File. There's 3 ways to do this. You can go up to File and you can do a Save As. That's the way I did it yesterday. That's not necessarily the best way. You do want to save your own copy. Save or Save As, your own copy, your own PSD, your own whatever, so you can have it. But when you're exporting it for the challenge, there's 2 ways to do it. You can either choose Export As, and this is the new way to do it. And you can choose the file format, JPEG. You can choose the quality settings that you want, and you can just export out a JPEG. You do want to do sRGB, which is better for the web, better for online. And this is a fairly small size image, so it's okay to do that. So if I can just hit Export All, and it will export and ask me where. I'm going to save it to the desktop, and done. So that's one way to do it. That's the new way to do it. The older way, which I still use most of the time, is under File, and it is under Export, and it is called Save for Web Legacy. So if you hear me pause, by the way, because I was kind of like stretching that out, it's because I'm having to remember where something is that I always use the keyboard shortcut for. So I was like, I always do Command-Shift-S. And it's like, where is it again? In the menu? Because I don't ever choose it from the menu. So that's why I paused for a second. But anyway, Save for Web Legacy. And that brings up the traditional Save for Web, where you can go in and choose a preset like JPEG high quality, JPEG low quality, so forth and so on. You can change the size. So if you want to get it down to a specific size, and by the way, we have a challenge on this for exporting and sizing, so don't spend a lot of time on this today. And then, of course, you can save it wherever you want. Now, why do I still prefer the legacy Save for Web? Because it usually, still to this day, makes the images smaller for the web. So I just prefer it because of that. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Save. And by the way, we can go ahead and take it down. Let's say we take it down to 1080 pixels wide, which is a great Instagram size. We can go ahead and save that. And I'm just going to rename this one number 2. And we'll save it out to the desktop, and away we go. All right, so now you would go over to the daily challenge. You would create a project. And once you create that project, you would upload your file. Number 2. And it will upload. See how much smaller that is compared to the big one I did yesterday? You're going to hit continue. The cover image is great that it's already going to use. You're going to do PS daily challenge 1 and crop and continue. And then again, you can add in all the creative fields and the tools you use and all of that. But the main thing you want to do is make sure you put in for the keywords PS daily challenge. So we'll be able to find it when we're done. All right, so once you publish that, creative fields, I guess I do have to put that in. This is photography related, and done. And I'll go ahead and put the tools in while I have a couple seconds here. I'm gonna use Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop, great. If I had more than one tool, I would go ahead and say that. Done, and publish. All right, so I hope you got what you need out of this today to work on your daily challenge for today. And again, you can experiment with this photo if you don't already have one, but what I really want to see from you, great if you want to use this one, but I really want to see your photos. I've already seen mine. I want to see yours. I want to see what you can do. Give me a before and after of a great situation where you had a decent photo and you made it better with the techniques I just showed you. And again, if you don't have a photo, great, use this one. But I'd be more interested to see yours. So with that said, cheers everybody, thanks for watching, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Stay tuned though, because right after me, you're gonna continue with the Photoshop challenge, or Photoshop stream with Eunice Wu. Thanks everybody, bye.